Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tom Brace. I am going to be the Master of Ceremonies this afternoon to an incredibly distinguished group of speakers that we are so pleased saw fit to join us this afternoon. Let me do just a couple of quick housekeeping measures. In terms of exiting, you can exit directly out of the two doors on the right here or the main door that you came in on. And then at the far east end of the east gallery, the far end, the south end, is another exit. So I would point out that the building is fully alarmed, emergency lighting and so forth, and most importantly, fully sprinkled. So I do not see you needing a rapid exit. We were discussing what the alarm might sound like, and I'll try not to imitate it, but can you imagine kind of a loud whoop at over 90 decibels? So if you see that in your mind's eye, a loud whoop. I'm going to wear several hats today. I will start out as the chairman of the board of the Fire Museum. We are delighted to be opened again. A recent article in the Pioneer Press showed just under 200 nonprofits perished, if you will, in the COVID time. And I'm proud to say that we were closed, but we did survive, and we're back open again. So for that, we're happy. This was this building that was started, if you will, this museum by a Minneapolis fire captain who built a trust account over many, many years. He and his wife, he had no children, and so this trust account enabled us to do two things: have a fire museum and have a place where retired firefighters could come and talk about the great fires that they fought. And so as a consequence, we have this facility today at 664 22nd Avenue Northeast. We're here to remember the victims and families of the Cedar High apartment fire. We're also here to celebrate the passage of legislation to prevent those type of high-rise fire tragedies in the future in the state of Minnesota. And we also want to demonstrate at the conclusion of the remarks and questions a fire demonstration that says fire is fast, but fire sprinklers are faster. And that will be the side-by-side burn narrated at the conclusion of this program. I also have the honor, and this is not necessarily in order of importance, but there are some people that really have to be recognized here. Let me quickly do that. I will start with Shane Ray, the president of the National Fire Sprinkler Association, Mohammed Noor, the Minnesota House of Representatives, John Hewitt, Minnesota House of Representatives, Carrie Dietzick, the Minnesota Senate, Abdi Mohammed, a family representative. Some of these people will be speaking later. Carla Bingham, Minnesota Senate, Jim Smith, our state fire marshal, Tina Smith, our U.S. Senator, Amy Klobuchar, our U.S. Senator. Both need no introduction, and we're just delighted that both of you are here. Mr. John Harrington, the Minnesota Public Safety Commissioner. We have the Assistant Commissioner, Mr. Bruce West, former State Fire Marshal and Assistant Commissioner Bruce West. John Friedel, is looking very casual, but nevertheless most welcome, the retired Minneapolis Fire Chief, however, clearly involved in this tragic fire under his administration. Trinidad Uribe, the local 417 business manager. Eric Pratt with the Minnesota Senate. Liz Ryer, Minnesota House of Representatives. George Sherman, a business owner, a remarkable person in terms of retrofit projects that he personally was involved in. Rosalind Robertson, the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry, and last but clearly not least, Jeannie Cleburne, a Minnesota representative. So, without any further comments on my part, I will move toward our first speaker. Now, I believe I'm correct when I say that the term Noor in Arabic means light. And clearly, Muhammad Noor provided a guiding light in terms of the movement, first the concept, the movement, and the ultimate passage of the bill. And without further introduction, I'd like to ask Muhammad Noor to come to the podium for his remarks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brace, for your kind introduction. Senator Tina Smith, Senator Amy Klobuchar, our distinguished guest, and the Minnesota Senator Kerry Ditzak, our own senator here, and also Senator Bigham. Welcome to District 60B, which is represented by Sydney Jordan. 68. I'm 60B. We're all 60, right?
All 60.
And I wanted to really start by remembering that day when the fire occurred on the high-rise building on the 14th floor of Cedar Riverside. My phone never stopped ringing. As soon as I picked up the phone, I was told that the high-rise building in Cedar Riverside is on fire. That tragic incident that took place while many families were sitting down for the Thanksgiving holiday, many of those families were mourning the loss of 5 individuals. As soon as I came to the site, I saw the humanity, not only from the people who were down there trying to console the family members, but can you imagine the firefighters who were carrying heavy equipment all the way up to the 14th floor. What you see here isn't even the site where it started. I have those pictures. The fire, because of the wind, the gust, it was going up into the sky from that 14th floor. The smoke. That smoke, the black pitch smoke that took the whole building, the stairways, I can still remember that day. You know, when the firefighters who were heroic to go up when people were coming down, bringing one body at a time. In fact, one of the 6th person who passed away initially was considered dead, and he was taken to the hospital and subsequently passed away. That tragic incident is something that we still remember. Those families and the support that we've been providing encouraged us to say no more loss of fire for something that is preventable. Having fire sprinklers is really essential. As you've heard from Tom, if fire is quick or fast, then sprinklers can turn them off quickly. In any given fire, you need 3 things. You need firefighters, you need fire alarms, and you need fire sprinklers. And this legislation that was signed into law by Governor Tim Walz, with the support of my colleagues in the House and in the Senate, this was a bipartisan bill, bicameral bill, although we haven't reached the conclusion of where we want to be, to make sure that it's inclusive of all high-rise buildings. This is more targeted to the public housing at this point, but this is not the end. We would like to make sure every high-rise building in the state of Minnesota is retrofitted with sprinklers, and we will get it done. And that is the assurance that we will keep on fighting. And we could not have done this without the support of those who came before us. Women, I see our fire marshal, Mr. Smith, the family member, Abdi Mohammed, and many more. Tom Grace, for your persistence. I also wanted to thank the individuals who showed up and never gave up. This was a 30-year in the making. This same bill was vetoed twice in 93 and 94. But this time we never gave up, no matter how it took us to get it done. This is first step in getting things done, but we want to make sure that we still recognize those family members, and we will continue our part to make sure safety is a priority for all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Representative Noah. Our next speaker is Abdi Mohammed, and as he's coming up, Abdi suffered a personal tragedy in the loss of his mother in that fire. Please come to the podium, Abdi. Thank you.
Thanks, Compress. Thanks, President Noor. Well, Noor said everything that needs to be said. I will not repeat what he said because it is what it is, and it was a tragedy that happened, not just to me, but it happened to the entire community that were living in that building. And it was unfortunate that it happened that day on the eve of Thanksgiving of 2019. So I would like to first acknowledge all U.S. senators here, Tina Smith, Amy Klobuchar, our state senator, Kerry Bitzik, and the other officials that, I'm sorry I won't name them, but are all elected officials. I'm happy for you that you're all here. The daily Thanksgiving fire in Cedar Public Housing on November 27, 2019 killed 5 precious souls. And 1 precious soul later died. So it totals up to 6 people now. I lost my lovely mom who was caring for all of us, the siblings. She did not just care just for her family, but for the whole community that she lived amongst them. And they were so sad that she passed away, and they were really crying, not just for us, but that what she did for them. It's a dent that's cannot be manned. It's a big hole that's been on us and part of the community as well. And I'm sure that the other families who lost their loved ones, 100%, they love them, and there's a void that's in there that's been lost, and it can't be repaired at all. So I'll go ahead and mention the victims' names with a moment of silence, please. The first victim is Amatal Adam. Marian Mahmoud. My lovely mom, Marifa Mahmoud. Jerome Stewart. Taylor Scott Barron. And Salat Samantha. Just to conclude, I'm happy that the bill passed in the state congress and signed by the governor to retrofit the sprinklers to public housing, as my representative here, Mahmoud Noor, said. But I've got a word to the legislatures, both in the US and in the Senate. We're not still out of the woods yet. There's a lot to be done. As Mr. Noor indicated earlier, this fight is just not for public housing, but it's all across the whole nation, if I may, the whole nation, to retrofit sprinklers in all the high rises. Again, with the people who are elected officials, they were elected just for one paramount goal, and the goal is to value lives, either be in the state or be across the nation. And the lives will be cherished when their safety is not compromised. And this is to install sprinklers on all high rises, not only in public housing. And again, I just want to be a politician, but just to set aside all those stormy, what do you call that, but not getting along, but just to get along and help out the common people for the common good and for the betterment for the whole nation. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Senator Dietzick. And one thing that we learned and relearned was that legislation is the art of compromise. And what ended up was the Senate version, but it clearly is a wonderful building block as we go forth. We're on a firm base, and we know how important that is. So, without any further introduction, for your efforts, a hearty thank you as well, Senator Dietzick. Please take the podium.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. So we're here to remember the victims from the past, but also to celebrate that with passage of this bill, we are one step closer to no one else dying because there are no sprinklers. I want to thank my co-authors on this bill over the last few years. Senator Bigham is here with us today. In the only divided legislature in the country, it took bipartisan effort. It took a lot of us working together, and I had bipartisan authors. I want to thank Senator Rosen, Senator Newman, Senator Frentz, and Senator Lax. They were authors over the last few years. Lack of sprinklers is a bipartisan issue. It's not just a Minneapolis issue. It impacts buildings all across the state, from Mankato to Hutchinson to Fairmont, and also a lot of unknown areas. I want to acknowledge the work of Senator Rarick. He is chair of the Senate Labor and Industry Committee, and his willingness to hear the bill really got it rolling, and then his willing to continue to push that bill in the Senate really helped us get it included in the jobs bill in the Senate. He then continued to work with Chair Knorr and Chair Pratt in the Conference Committee to make sure that this was passed, because this bill will save lives. I also want to thank Labor for their support. It took a true coalition to get this passed. Specifically, David Ibarra with the pipe trades, and Trinidad Uribe, who I believe is here somewhere, with the sprinkler fitters, Local 417. They were also calling, thank you, yep, they were also calling and bugging everybody and anybody on these committees to get this bill passed. I want to thank the State Fire Marshal, the Firefighters Association, the Chiefs Association, Chief Friedel, the League of Minnesota Cities, Minnesota Multi-Housing, and Minnesota NARO for their input on this bill. We truly did listen in the Senate and try to figure out how can we make this pass, again, in the only divided legislature in the country. This bill had broad coalition supporting it and bipartisan support. And I look forward to continue working with them to determine all the buildings across the state that need sprinkler refitting, not just public housing buildings, but all the buildings. And we are going to make sure that happens. I also want to thank Senator Klobuchar and Senator Smith and Representative Omar for their work to get funding. Representative Omar unfortunately couldn't be here today, but she recently announced that through the appropriation process, she secured $2 million in sprinkler funding for the Minneapolis Public Housing Association. And so that will go a long ways to getting the Minneapolis buildings retrofitted. But we need Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar to keep working because we have more buildings. It's not just a Minneapolis issue. So thank you for that. We appreciate all of your work, and we all look forward to working with you and our federal delegation to make this happen so that there is safety across the country. We want to work to make sure that there are safe homes in Minnesota and across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Giesecke. To prove that our two national senators work very closely together, I was informed very specifically that Senator Tina Smith would go first, albeit the junior senator, and that had been worked out in advance, and that was not a protocol issue. So with anticipation, we invite Senator Tina Smith to the podium.
Well, good afternoon. And it is true, I am not accustomed to going before Senator Klobuchar, but I will take this opportunity.
She'll filibuster.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here, to Representative Knorr and Senator Giesecke and all of the members of the state legislature for your leadership in St. Paul to make headway on this issue. I'm grateful to you, to Abdi, thank you for sharing your personal story and helping us to remember that this is not a policy issue, this is a personal issue. So I'm grateful for you. To Shane Ray and Tom Grace, thank you so much for helping to host and organize us. Thank you to the Minneapolis Firefighters Museum, one of my favorite places, and I'm grateful to be here with members of the Minneapolis Fire Department and Chief Friedel, who I believe is here somewhere, and to all of you. So I'm here today because I believe that everybody deserves a safe place to call home, including protection from the risks of a catastrophic fire like we saw at the Cedar High Apartments. The day before Thanksgiving 2019, it was a frigid day and fast-moving flames moved up, engulfing the upper floors of this high-rise. And despite the best efforts of firefighters, we lost 5 souls that day. 6 altogether. And we have, as we've heard so eloquently, a void that can't be filled, but a moment when we can take this tragic loss and turn it into good and turn it into action for the good of all of us. And that is what I think we need to be focused on here today. There are about 20,000 publicly supported apartments in Minnesota. About 10,000 of them are in greater Minnesota. And any unit that is built before 1992 isn't required to have a sprinkler system, which could literally mean the difference between life and death for the people who live in these buildings. Experts at the hearing, which I held this past week, to draw attention to this issue and to galvanize support for installing sprinklers in all publicly supported buildings so that everyone can be safe. These experts, including the executive director, the deputy executive director of Minneapolis Public Housing, told us that there are decades of deferred maintenance in these public apartment buildings, including sprinklers in older buildings, but including many other safety and health hazards. And who is at risk here? Most of the people who live in publicly supported housing are elders. They are people who are living with disabilities. These are people who deserve a safe and decent place to live. And that is what we must commit ourselves to. This is what our work is. And this is what we are pushing for in Washington, D.C. with my great partner, Senator Klobuchar. I am so grateful to what's happened in St. Paul, Senator Giesecke and Representative Knorr and all of you. Your leadership on this issue, along with the support of Governor Walz and the legislature, has created this commitment to make sure that we install sprinkler systems in our state's high-rise, publicly supported buildings by 2023. And Minneapolis has also made a commitment, which is very important, but we need the resources to get this done. And that is why Representative Omar and Senator Klobuchar and I are fighting hard to make sure that we have those resources for Minneapolis. But as has been said, it is not just Minneapolis where this need exists. And that is why in the Senate, I'm proud, in partnership with my friend and colleague, Senator Klobuchar, to be working on the Public Housing Fire Safety Act, which would provide resources so that every publicly supported high-rise building that does not yet have sprinklers so that we could help local communities install sprinklers in those buildings so that more people can be safe. Our bill would provide funding for local public housing authorities to be able to get that work done. And we are also working with the Biden administration in the Build Back Better infrastructure bills that we are working so hard on this summer to make sure that there is support in there to address all of the deferred maintenance that is so desperately in need of attention, not only in Minnesota, but all across the country. So the time is now to take action on this vital health and safety, life and safety issue. And I hope that with all of our hard work, we will be sure that we will not see a fire again like we saw at Cedar High. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Senator Smith. And now, as Senator Klobuchar is coming to the platform, I'd just like to say that I remember, that Ray might indicate, when you were a Hennepin County prosecutor and a very fine one. I remember enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, well, thank you. And Tom's referring to something that maybe some of our newer representatives weren't around for or in high school. But that was when we actually took on a case that was over decades old, of 2 Minneapolis firefighters that were killed in a case of blatant arson. And we were able to convene a grand jury and get the facts and actually prosecute the guy that did it. And I bet there's some things in this museum about that case, but it was a horrific situation. It really taught me a lot about not only when we think about firefighters living 2 blocks from a fire station as I do, and maybe I have a fan on every night just in case there's noise that comes by on my street, but I've lived there 25 years, had many birthday parties for my daughter there. I get to see firsthand the safety work that the public safety members in our community do, but also from the experiences I had with those arson cases, what you're up against. So thank you for that. I think what you've got here, of course, is something very different, which was another part of our system that wasn't functioning, as Mohammed so well pointed out, and Abdi, thank you for your beautiful words. And that is that people aren't safe in their homes. And I want to thank Mohammed and Carrie for their work, my own state senator, and also Tina, who has really taken a lead on this federal legislation in such a big way. And she has this new position as the chair of the Housing Subcommittee, which is a big deal, which is part of, in the Senate, the Banking Committee. And so she's able to work and lead not only on this, but a lot of other housing issues. And as she pointed out, we really have 2 sources for funding. We've got this process we're going through that we're all putting in requests. We haven't done that for a while. They used to call them earmarks. I call them congressionally initiated projects or something like that. And then the second thing is this funding with Build Back Better, which is really going to help us with getting funding for things like housing and the like. And I think Tom, Shane, you all know what I'm talking about and the challenges that we have. And I also wanted to acknowledge some of the other legislators here. I think Sydney was noted, John Hewitt from an area that I've spent some time in. There you are. Thank you, Representative, and Ginny Cleburne, as well as Liz Ryer, who's right behind us there. And Carla and Carrie has already been mentioned, but thank you very much for your work in the state basis. I remember the day of the fire because Siad Ali, who's worked for me forever, who's on the Minneapolis School Board, called me, and with that beautiful voice he has, boss, this is bad. People die, people are dying, people are dying. And I think he went there, is what I recall, and called me from there and reported back what was happening. As you so well put it, Abdi, I mean, you went through a horrible loss, but you were willing to come here today and advocate for something bigger than your own loss and the loss of so many other families in this community. So we hope this never, ever happens again. And so much of this is making sure that we take this seriously and remember that not everyone has a sprinkler. I think we know that now, and not everyone is fortunate enough as we are in our Twin Cities area to have the firefighters that we do. But it just goes to how important it is to have safe buildings. If I look at the kids there in the back, we don't want anyone else to be hurt by this. So thank you so much, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much, Senator Klobuchar. It's my pleasure to introduce State Fire Marshal Jim Smith, who was a sterling advocate all the way through this process. Reserved nothing, spoke valiantly for the need for sprinklers. It's a real pleasure as a former State Fire Marshal to meet another State Fire Marshal that shares this sprinkler passion. So, Jim Smith.
Good afternoon. I want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank all of our special guests and dignitaries for taking time out of their very busy schedule to attend this special occasion. However, it's with mixed emotions that I stand before you here today. Though I am so very grateful for all the work that went into getting this bill passed, I realize that it came upon us through such a tragic event. Since 2004, in Minnesota alone, there have been 65 fires that started on or above the 7th floor in high-rise structures. In the majority of these high-rise fires, they occurred in multi-family residences. Interestingly enough, though, 64 of those fires had automatic fire sprinklers. And in 64 of those fires, a single sprinkler head extinguished the fire. Let me say that again. In every single one of those 64 high-rise fires, a single sprinkler head extinguished the fire. To drive that point home even further, in those 64 fires, there were no fatalities. Unfortunately, as we all know, the main difference between those 64 fires and the tragic fire that happened on November 27th, 2019 at 630 Cedar is that there were no automatic fire sprinklers installed in that apartment complex. The tragedy of losing 6 innocent people is only magnified by the simple fact that once again this disastrous fire would have been quickly contained, if not completely extinguished, had there been the presence of automatic fire sprinklers. I want to take a step back, and I see Chief Ray in the back and retired Chief Friedel here. I do want to make special mention of the firefighters that responded to this fire and faced unimaginable heat, smoke, and flames. This was a firefight like no others. You can see from the picture here the devastation. This is not only smoke damage, but this was high heat. I can only imagine what it was like to enter that floor and put out that fire. The conditions on that fire floor would have been far more tenable had there been an automatic sprinkler or sprinkler system. Being a firefighter for 35 years, I can tell you right now that most likely, had there been fire sprinklers in that building, this would have been a pump can and a smoke extractor. Instead, it was a conflagration with 6 lost lives. So, with that being said, I do want to, again, extend my gratitude and thanks for the bravery and dedication of the Minneapolis Fire Department. In closing, the mission of the State Fire Marshal Division is to protect the lives and property of every single person residing in or even traveling through the state of Minnesota. To be clear, the State Fire Marshal has and will always be a strong advocate for the installation of automatic fire sprinklers in all high-rise dwellings. Through this legislation and proposed federal assistance, and public-private partnerships, we now have a path leading us forward to retrofit every public housing, multi-story apartment building in the state of Minnesota. So thank you to President Shane Ray, Tom Brace, Tim Butler, and everybody from the NFSA. Thank you to Senator Smith, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith, and to Senator Dietzick. I will never forget the day that Representative Knorr and I had many, many conversations, and one evening, Senator Dietzick called me on the phone to get information about the sprinklers. When I hung up the phone, I said, "We got this. We got this. This is good. This is good." So thank you. But lastly and most importantly, thank you, Representative Mohammed Noor, for fighting a good fight, for fighting the right fight by taking on this extremely important piece of legislation along with Senator Dietzick and making this law become a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, State Fire Marshal Smith. Now, last but clearly not least, is our final speaker. At his conclusion of his remarks, we will entertain some questions from the audience or the press, whoever. And then after that period, just to remind all of you, we will move out into the parking lot for a demonstration. I'd like to have the principals up here, and then we could take a picture before we move out with these other pictures. All right, enough. President Shane Ray has experiences in, I would say, the length and breadth of the fire service. And I was thinking of what is the right word to use, and it's kind of a Renaissance fire service person. Been a fire chief, firefighter, fire educator, public fire safety educator, mayor, but most importantly, a state fire marshal. And I couldn't resist. I think you're in for a treat in our concluding remarks. President Shane Ray, who leads an organization that is only 50 people, but has a far greater impact in this country than just 50 people.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you. He said I was the mayor. I said, yes, I made a statement one time. I never lost an election from city council to mayor. To one of my press folks said, "Mayor, you lost that last election." I said, "No, it's just about perspective. I was elected back to the general population." So I certainly sympathize with our public policy makers as we go through this. But we are here to remember those who have gave so much. And Abby, the comments of your precious mother now rest in our minds and rest in our hearts for a long time, and may they never go away. The spotlight of advancing fire protection, though, in Minnesota and across this country rests upon you, and it rests upon your progress and the great work that you have done as public policy makers and advocates to a cause that says, and you all have said it well, no one should die this way. Congratulations, Minnesota. You are leading the way in helping building occupants and firefighters be safer. You're also helping building owners to navigate the long-term negative impact that we see of fire. And as a former fire investigator who's looked at many of these fires, fire fatalities, the trauma never really stops because the family members, and especially the firefighters who have to face that, live on. Thank you, Representative Knorr, for the relationships you have, obviously, with the family, for what you do in your community, the position in the state, but your perseverance to get this done made a difference. Senator Dietrich, you, for your dedication for the cause and for your ability to navigate that public policy way to get us to where we are, and as Tom described, that foundation we need. Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar, thank you for your concern and care of your own state, but also for this country, and for your efforts in leading the way to let everyone know that fire is a local and a state problem, but it is a national problem that impacts us all as we see fires and building collapses and things occur across this country that are a codes and standards issue, and to all our fire officials in here and building officials who know that codes and standards are important. But to each and every one of you, to the staff members, to our own Minnesota team, to the State Fire Marshal's Office, to the Fire Service, you all have made a difference in this, that this is public policy where you will save lives and property that will live beyond our lifetime. Our Minnesota team has dedicated countless hours to this day, but most of all to this cause. Now let me just touch on fire. Fire. I have been to the community where this fire has occurred. These pictures up here represent, as Fire Marshal Smith described, the horror faced by those occupants and to our firefighters who have gone outside to prepare for our demonstration today. This doesn't have to happen in the future. We know the solution, and this law you've passed is a great start. And thank you, Representative Knorr, for remembering our last time here, that you said it well. Early warning, that's the smoke detection. Early suppression, that's the fire sprinkler that does the important work to give our firefighters time to get there, limit their risk to cancer and the cancer-causing agents of what they face. Fire, thanks to the support, though, of Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar for the Fire Act grants. We know more about fire, and I've been blessed to be a part of that for the last 20 years of my career, to burn to everything from homes to high-rises. To know about, and you see it on these charred walls, the wind-driven fires that our firefighters faced. But without those Fire Act grants, we would not have done the research, and I spent the first 15 years of my career not knowing what we know today. We just had to continue to get the message out. But this, for high-rise fires, we know that fire is much more severe, and we know that it's much more deadly than ever before. The materials and the contents in our fires is what's killing the occupants and what's killing our firefighters. Not only from the fire itself, but from cancer. Our firefighters that night, as Chief Smith said, they did an amazing job. They faced a wind-driven fire, which we have studied, and we know can go over 2,000 degrees. We should not face a fire of that magnitude in this day and time. If some of the most experienced fire officers in our country underestimate fire, how do we as laypersons navigate that tragic event? And how can we expect them to react? At the closing, we'll conduct a side-by-side demonstration out here that will show you the impact of early warning with the smoke alarm. One unit has early suppression of fire sprinkler and firefighters. The other unit is missing the fire sprinkler. And the synthetic materials is all new. We have researched these. We know that just the contents of this one 8x8 unit out here, you'll see. We have tested that at Underwriters Laboratory inside a 3,200 square foot house. When you couple the new energy code, when you couple building materials, when you couple the things that are changing faster than we can possibly test them, it is a new day in the fire environment, and we know, and you'll see that. It will take a 3,200 square foot house to zero survivability in less than 5 minutes. From 4 minutes and 10 seconds to 4 minutes and 16 seconds, we've seen a second floor increase 1,000 degrees in these tests. I told our interns, and God bless our interns that are here today, I told them when they were testing this fire, I said, something had to be wrong. This fire couldn't increase that to that magnitude. And one of the best scientists at NIST at the time, now with UL, says, Shane, they're exactly right. As we see this experience today, feel free to come up afterwards and ask us questions and let us be your experts for that. But let's pledge today not to forget the Cedar High apartment fire. May we always remember them and their sacrifices. But please keep educating, keep advocating, and keep adopting public policy that will save lives. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for those remarks. Now, you've been a really patient group. Does anyone have any comments or questions that they would like to direct to any of the speakers? Okay, well, start over here, please.
Hi, Tori Vanny with Axios. I have a question for Senator Smith or Klobuchar.
Would you stand up, ma'am, so we could hear you better, please?
Hi, Senators. Just to clarify, so the grant funding proposal, sprinkler grant funding, could the infrastructure package and your budget resolution be a vehicle for passing that too, or is that its own path and you're looking for? Yeah. funding for public housing in general.
So yes and yes.
Yes and yes, okay.
The infrastructure package, the American Jobs Plan, American Families Plan, the Build Back Better Plan, we'll call it, includes substantial investments for improving public housing. And that could, when we pass that, that could easily help to support retrofitting buildings with sprinklers. But in addition, we are working to include the Fire Safety Act that we introduced because of what happened at Cedar High. We will work to get that included in the legislation, right?
And the request for the funding, right, that is, we're making a number of requests statewide for different things, and so this is one of them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, but that will be a separate.
Yeah.
Another question, okay, in the back, sir. If you'd stand and ask who you'd like to ask.
I don't have a question, but I would like to make a comment.
All right,
My
sir.
name is Abdul Sakbihi. I lived there for 24 years in that neighborhood of Cedar Riverside. I was there with the representative and the family there, and we provided service for 3 months. I just want to say thank you, Mr. Mahmoud, and our Karen Duziak who represent us. And I also want to thank our institutions in the community that help those victims, including our mosque, Dar al-Hijra, People Center Clinic, and also Ministry United. Thank you again.
Okay, please.
Sure. I'm Callan Gray with KSDP. This question would be for Representative Noor or Senator Pizzek, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So my question is, do you have a number for how many apartment buildings or public housing buildings would be required to retrofit with sprinklers under this state legislation?
Do you have the exact numbers?
I don't have an exact number, but I can give a couple of qualifying answers to that. We learned that there was a sorry need for good statistics. We believe that it's approximately, the whole universe is about 70 buildings statewide. And there is a need to drill down and refine that. I've heard other numbers that there were 22 facilities in Minneapolis that would go through this program over a 10-year period. But I would not want to stand before you and tell you that we know with great accuracy, but there's a real need for that. Go ahead, Senator.
That's why we, in a special session, introduced additional legislation, because we are working with the League of Cities, requiring cities across the state to literally notify us what buildings that are above 7 stories do not have sprinkler systems, because we truly don't know. Working with the fire marshal's office, I know my office, my assistant here, Tatiana Reed, we were literally calling cities across the state to try to find out what buildings there were available. And I will tell you, I was never so excited to have a building in Hutchinson over 7 stories. Not have a sprinkler system. I'm sorry for those people, but you know, it got me a Republican who, you know, wasn't interested in the bill. I'll just be honest.
Just to give you just the overall numbers, we were informed, I think the state fire marshal had some numbers, 69, I believe, high-rise buildings, which we identified, and most of them are public housing, especially in Minneapolis. Thank goodness St. Paul, they were smart enough to retrofit all their high-rise buildings. It's only that in Minneapolis that we're still struggling with that, and based on the plan that I've seen, they've already put forward some of the even other needs, for renovation set aside, and now they're retrofitting 659 units, and that's just a small portion of it, using their other infrastructure funds to do that. So we need to help them as much as we can. We are coming to, we'll go back to the state legislature, making sure that we fight for capital investment funding, the bonding that we'll be talking about, funding for retrofitting. That will be something that we will make sure that the public housing, because it belongs to the public, we do have a responsibility to take care of the residents who live in those houses.
We were given a number that it could cost as much as $1 million per system to install these units. When you talk about the funding piece of this, and maybe you have different numbers, but just in general, what dollar figure are you looking at in terms of state investment?
Well, what we're looking at, a number of real-world examples, is that it's approximately $2,500 per unit. Now remember that a lot of these tall buildings already have water we call them high-rise risers, that go up to stairwells that they can tap in and run horizontally. So it's not like they start over again. But I have to say to you with all candor is the opponents of this will inflate what the cost will be and throw into it everything from demolition costs and repainting and new carpets while we're at it. So I think the industry tells us about $2,500 a unit and about 2 1/2 day interruptions. That's another one that you gotta move out for 6 months while you do it. 2 half-day interruptions, and we can do it.
That's not true.
That is not true, yeah. You do not have to move out. So I know we're running late, I just say I was in the trenches in 93 and 94, and I heard some old myths that seem to never die. And there's a number of them as they pertain to sprinklers, and one of them is a terribly inflated cost.
So just in general, when you go back next session, what dollar figure are you gonna be seeking for, investment in this?
So right now, the public housing can apply to, we have a category in the bonding bill that public housing can apply for. I think it was 20 million in the last bill in October, so we'll look for more money for that. And then also, that's why we kind of need that assessment to find out how many buildings there are across the state. Because not all of these buildings are public housing buildings. You might have some low-income housing buildings that also need to be retrofitted. And again, it's a balance of how do they find the money, because we want to support more low-income housing, but they also need the safety because we don't want anybody else dying. So once we get that assessment, then I think we'll have a better idea of what the dollar figure's looking at. And then also looking hopefully for the federal dollars as well.
Do you anticipate that funding are you confident that funding will be able to move through next session, or that you'll be able to find a mechanism to do that?
We're working on it.
We're confident that there will be funding through the capital investment through the state, because we did, let me put it this way. The state has got enough resources to invest in those in public housing. So we'll try our best to make sure that we advocate for more funding. Last session, we funded 16 million for public housing. I think this time we'll fight for more additional funding.
Perfect, next session, or are there still costs towards the
Well,
funding bill for
this year.
September?
And just as a reminder, $40 billion is included in the Build Back Better legislation that we're working to pass, that would then be available for sprinkler systems and other much-needed repairs to these publicly owned buildings.
That's a lot of money, so.
And this is one time, for the most part, this can be one-time money to retrofit these buildings.
The bonding, there's talks to have a bonding bill in September.
Yep.
So, right?
Well, yeah, anything is possible. So special session, hopefully collaborate. But don't forget that the insurance savings, because of retrofitting, is also significant to reduce that cost that we talked about, the 2,500 per year.
Okay, any other questions? Possibly one more? Could we give all our participants a round of applause? Well, thank you so much for attending the press briefing in our fire museum. And now we're going to give you what I believe will be, for those of you who have not seen this, a very exciting demonstration, but a very meaningful one. On my right, well, actually on both sides, my right, your left, this depicts a typical bedroom, living room, a typical room. And you see that it is identical. Now this, we didn't go to the Salvation Army and picked up whatever furniture we could find. We went to a reputable furniture store, and this stuff is brand new. Brand new. This is what you would buy, and this is what you'd put in your home. They're made to look identical, except if you look really closely in the middle of the ceiling of the one on my right, your left, you'll see a little sprinkler head. And that sprinkler head is the only difference between the two rooms. We're going to
light the waste basket, I think it's important. Go get it sorted. We have a waste basket. It is a Sorry for that little technical difficulty. I'm not sure this is on, but can you all hear me? All right, let me just keep going here. There's a waste basket, and it has a couple of crumpled newspaper. Now, this isn't salted. This is a couple of crumpled newspaper in a combustible waste basket. And what we're trying to show is that a cigarette improperly discarded or a candle or uncombustible goes into the waste basket and starts the drapery on fire. And you're going to see a V as the drapery, and it's nothing more than a cotton sheet. Nothing more than a cotton sheet. And you will see the flames go up and then start across the ceiling. You're going to hear a smoke detector. We all know what a smoke detector is. A smoke detector does nothing to put out the fire, but it does alert you. And it does tell you of the situation that you need to exit. The sprinkler head is heat sensitive, and we call it a quick responsive head. This quick responsive head will react anywhere between 135 and 165. You'll see that go off and extinguish the fire. On the other side, it's identical, but there is no sprinkler head. And we're going to let it go to something called flashover, and President Ray will take you through that. I just wanted to close with what you're witnessing is the ultimate level of fire safety and fire protection, and that's a sprinkler system. And we recommend them in all new homes, and I, for one, retrofitted a home built in 1939. This is a wonderful technology. It has been around for generations, back to the 19th century. So, without any further introduction, let me call on President Ray. President Ray will walk us through, and we're now going to have
this thing. So, maybe a lot of interference with it, but we'll try to see what happens here as we go forward. But yeah, we're gonna light the sprinkler room first. So I've been fortunate to be able to burn things, as we said, thanks to the funding from the federal government. We've been doing this since the 90s with Christmas trees. We were doing these tests to test smoke alarms when we realized the fuel package of these new furnishings. So we're gonna go ahead and start this fire. I'll try to get here where I can see and stay out of the way. As Tom said, we're gonna light this thing in a waste paper basket. It's only as if you discarded a candle. So common things is discarded material as a cause of fire in the room, in your living room. Naturally, kitchen fires are in the kitchen, but this is simulating a fire in your living room. So this could be a discarded cigarette. It could be a malfunctioning electrical piece of equipment. Could be a discarded candle that turned over. You threw a blanket over a candle. You can see the smoke. There's the smoke alarm. That's get out, stay out, and close the door on the way out. Now that's how quickly, because you had a fire, that sprinkler's flowing 13 gallons of water a minute, and it'll contain it to that room. Only that one closest to the fire goes off. That's why Fire Marshal Smith said, out of all those fires, they're contained with one head. That's the same across the country. 96% of the fires are contained with one sprinkler device. And again, you see we have water, and that's water damage, but it's not destroyed. The other thing this does, it gives people time to escape if you're able. What we know is children under 14 years old will not hear that smoke alarm. They will not wake up to the sound of that smoke alarm. You have to get to your children and get them out because they can't hear that. Their sleep cycles are such that they don't respond to that smoke alarm. This sprinkler gives us time to get out. It also gives time for firefighters to arrive and contain the fire to keep it from spreading. And in your house, this is only designed for it to keep the fire in that room of origin. And again, giving our firefighters time to get there and make sure that that fire's out. So, and you can see we got some damage in this room, but again, the water restoration industry has come so far over time, they'll have this cleaned up, contained to that unit, contained to that floor, or the floor below it, really quickly. So that's the positive. And again, you can see our barrier here is salvaged. We'll let you come up and take a look at this. This is flowing 13 gallons of water a minute. They're about to flow 150 gallons of water a minute. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and start the fire in the side. And again, you'll see our intent with testing and demonstration is to be able to recreate the same fire. Same fire in the waste paper basket. This is missing the early suppression. This is missing the fire sprinkler system. So I'll try to watch that from here, staying as close to our wireless device as I can. But this is going to be a much different fire event than this one because, again, it has a smoke alarm, those people that can hear that and respond. But what about our elderly? What about handicapped, hearing impaired? What about those people with mobility issues? What about our pets? We're seeing over 400,000 pets a year dying, and that's common in fires. Now you can see we got the same speed of fire here. This fire is going to race up those curtains. Again, discarded material. You're going to start to see this smoke build up. This smoke is what kills. Smoke is that fuel from that fire, and you'll see the fire seem like it's going to die down. It's going to get lazy. That's what we know that says, hey, I think I got time. I can escape this. The problem I want you to watch is I have a piece of newspaper laying on this floor in here. As that smoke continues to build up, that's that couch in smoke form. And now this in your house would be much faster because we don't have a 10-mile-an-hour wind blowing in an 8-foot opening in your house. So you have to give us credit with the fact that says this is going to take longer than it would if you had this pumping out of a 30-inch door in a residential dwelling. The smoke is filling up the rest of your home. We know this smoke, as I said in there, a 3,200 square foot house can be filled with that smoke. And it's over 500 degrees at the ceiling. You don't hear a smoke alarm anymore. Why? Because it's already destroyed that smoke alarm. Just that little bit of heat destroyed one of the devices we need. And again, as you see, you think, well, this is going slow. But that smoke is heating every second this is going on. And when you see flashover, this newspaper, the good thing is in research, we would have thermocouples and we would be watching this on an iPad in my hand. But here I have a poor person thermocouple right there on the floor, and that's mine. That's a newspaper. Guess what I know that newspaper will do? It'll catch on fire at 500 degrees every time. So when you see this newspaper catch on fire, it's 500 degrees at the floor, which this event in here, I can feel it now, is not survivable. If you were in this room, this is not a survivable event. And it's about to be to where it's not survivable for firefighters. You see that smoke push more, get more intense, the velocity. You watch this chair. This chair, we now have a 3-dimensional fire. There's fire on the floor. Watch this chair as the top of that chair catches fire. And now you see my newspaper smoking? That newspaper is at 500 degrees and that's flashover. Get it, guys. That's total destruction. And you see how fast that window closed. It went from 500 degrees to 1,500 degrees in a matter of seconds. And that's what cost us our lives as firefighters. It's what takes the lives of our citizens. And it exposes our firefighters to an environment that they don't have to be exposed to. And that is what we know. This is damaged. This is destroyed. Now, as we let our firefighters mop up here, we'll get ready. Once they get this done and get this container, we'll let you come up here and see this. I want you to see the difference in these two sides. But before we go, and as I close here, I'd like my Minnesota team to come up here, because every time I've been at this event here, if we get our Minnesota team, and where's Joel? Joel needs to go back there and capture Chief Friedel, because we want to get Chief Friedel up here. Yep. As you see the firefighters, you can see, I want you to too particularly look at this furnishing. In a commercial building, we regulate furnishings. In our homes, we do not regulate furnishings. Now, I want to say this, that every time I've been to this museum, and every time I've had a fire at this place, Joel, get over here, this gentleman has come to see me. I had the chance of working with him and being a colleague with him at the National Fire Academy. Your former Minneapolis fire chief here was always a leader to help us, and I just want to say these two. We want to use this moment to express our appreciation to a very committed leader from here in Minneapolis. It's very appropriate that today my devotional was titled Hope Chest. It was John Maxwell described that Joe possessed integrity as a leader because there were four things. They had strong security, they had a clear conscience, they had pure motives, and a solid character. And Chief Friedel, that describes you, and I thought that appropriate today. We wanted to recognize you for your leadership and for always supporting our efforts here in Minnesota, and for visiting and coming and making sure that we were supported. So to you, to the men and women of the Minneapolis Fire Department, we want to give you this piece of appreciation. On behalf of the Minnesota team, we say thank you. And to our senators, our representatives, for being there. Thank you so much.